I was on the negotiating committee 3 times in the Tulsa Philharmonic. Thereafter, I went to the Nashville Symphony, and in all of those circumstances, I found that even though, for example, in Tulsa we had an attorney on our negotiating committee, as far as how we solve difficult core orchestra problems and also things like divisiveness between core and per service people, um, we weren't getting anywhere. It was, the orchestra was divided, management was taking advantage of that and actually fostering that division to their advantage. When it came to how we add players to the core, we didn't know how to do that. When it came to issues of daytime and nighttime rehearsals, it was extremely difficult to figure that out. That was more an issue with the Nashville Symphony. But the sum total was, while we would call the AF of M, I'm going back to the 70s, they were not skilled in the issues that were facing the regional orchestras at that time period. And we would call ICSOM. And ICSOM at that time also did not have answers for us. And so it became apparent that we needed our own organization so that we could communicate with each other. After I had originally sent out the letter back in 1982 proposing this idea, people came excited about that. We had some correspondence back and forth and about the possibilities of having a summer conference and having, someday a strike fund, or but particularly that we had a vehicle to communicate with each other. And through our initial outreach to each other, we had set up kind of informal communication network, and right away we saw the benefits of connecting with each other, learning from each other, and talking to each other on the phone. We didn't, of course, have email in those days. So when Lou's letter was sent out to the locals and the committees from all the regional orchestras that were contacted, they responded enthusiastically because they wanted to learn. It was a time when all of our orchestras were going through phenomenal change. And when people got to ROPA, we had some of the best teachers we could have had. Lou, Fred Zanone, Victor Fuentealba. Fred Zanone was then chair of ICSOM. And it was an absolute electrifying experience. And it just built upon the enthusiasm that was already there. There was one day in about, I think, 1983 sometime, where I got a voicemail from a man with a most wonderful voice who said, "My name is Lou Waldeck, and I'm with the AF of M, and I heard that you are doing things to try to start a regional orchestra players association, and I'd like to help." And so it was like almost the voice from God had called. And so I called Lou back right away and told him what our issues were at that time I was in the Nashville Symphony, and what I had experienced in Tulsa, and that we were trying to get a organization started similar to ICSOM that was solely for the needs of regional orchestras. And he got very excited about that, and particularly that the orchestras were trying to, had a thirst to learn, had a thirst to want to do things the right way. And so Lou communicated with me off and on from '83 onward, and then he called me one day in '84 that they were going to have what he termed a seminar in September of 1984 for what he hoped would be the beginning of the Regional Orchestra Players Association. And that is what happened in Columbus in 1984. And throughout that process, Lou was totally supportive. He went and campaigned to the International Executive Board and to AFM President Victor Fuentialba, who were all very supportive of it. And ROPA was created. Thereafter, through our efforts as the first ROPA board and through AFM Symphony Department at that time, the name Lou Waldeck became known, and we started bringing in Lou to do our negotiations. Lou began to do his famous dog and pony shows for all our orchestras, and we just absolutely soaked up the knowledge like sponges. It was just incredible. And all of a sudden, through Lou, we were coming to the table far more educated and sophisticated than our management, and our managements did not know what to do. So ROPA would not be here if it was not for Lou Waldeck. And I was extremely fortunate not only to have learned from him, and he hired me to work in SSD back in 1988, but to this day, his mentoring governs so much of everything that I do in all my work.
Now, neither kind of persuasion is effective by itself. If you only use force, management has no choice. If you're going to try to bully them, they have no choice but to take your strength. There's no way that they can back down. You simply go in, totally adamant, either you give us this or we're going to strike. They can't let you do that. They can't let you do that because they are in a very funny position with their board and with the public and with the politicians and the people who fund this thing and everything else. So they can't do that. If you use only reason, they'll let you talk and talk and talk, and on the night of the first rehearsal, they'll sign. Whatever it is, you will have no option. They will know that. Collective bargaining works best when both parties are strong and knowledgeable. A large part of this process has to do with equalizing the strength, with developing at least as much knowledge and preparation as the management will bring to the table, and in many cases, orchestras come to the table much more prepared than their managers. They have done homework that matches the management by some time. It's very valuable to do that. At the table, you do not use unnecessary sarcasm. Sarcasm is very painful. It gets them upset, it gets them defensive, it gets them angry. And why do you need that? It's not a good tool. Don't insult people. We're dealing with people. These people on the other side of the table are human beings. No matter, even if they're managers. They are human beings. They are working very hard, and in most cases, they are doing their job. Don't insult them. Don't question their integrity. Don't constantly impute the worst of motives. Don't forget, the management team is made up of people. Don't irritate people needlessly. The act of thing is needlessly. You have to say the hard truths. They have to hear them. But don't do it gratuitously. In a negotiation, there are a number of qualities that it is useful for negotiating committee members to have. Avoid anger. Do not ever speak when you are angry. That's when you say dumb things. If you become angry, let somebody else speak. If you're all angry, call a caucus. What you want to do with that anger is get control of it and let that anger, after you have cooled off, drive your sense of passion and commitment. Don't talk out of anger. That's when you make mistakes. It's when you do the really dumb things. You have to balance aggressiveness with reasonableness. You don't want people to think that you are so reasonable that they can eventually talk you into anything. On the other hand, you don't want them to think that you are so aggressive as to leave this process a total waste of time. So there needs to be a balance. Sometimes it can be a balance between two people, good cop, bad cop.